I mean this. One of the most talented young journalists in the biz is Caleb Calhoun joining us now. He and I had a wrap up of Josh Heupel's press conference yesterday. And Caleb, let's just dive right into it. I don't think Josh Heupel is happy at all.
No, I don't either. I don't know if he's necessarily concerned about the future of the program of the team this year, but we talked about it yesterday afternoon. He had a totally different vibe than the Josh Heupel that was dancing in the locker room Saturday after they won. And I think it's a safe bet that he was happy they won. He was relieved, and then like I think you brought it up, probably before the plane even touched down, as you said yesterday. He was probably already watching the film and was just super heated and probably just got his blood pressure boiling seeing all the mistakes because he was very. I mean, again, this is a Josh Heupel that doesn't usually say a lot in his press conferences, and he was very open that they didn't have a good week of practice last week.
And that's what stood out to me. Coaches never say that because ultimately practice should be on the coach. But he did come out and say we didn't have good practices leading up to Pitt, a ranked team on the road. How can you not have good practices leading up to a game? I'm fine with it if he says that after Akron, okay? But to say it leading up to a quality opponent really took me back.
Yeah, I agree. I'm wondering if I kind of thought about this yesterday because I mean, the concept of now Sarkisian is saying it, Nick Saban invented the term rat poison, infecting the locker room, but that shouldn't have infected Tennessee's locker room because they were playing, like you said, a ranked team on the road that won the SEC last year, that beat them last year. But I'm wondering if in areas where sports gambling is getting bigger, I thought about this recently. Tennessee is one of those states where sports gambling has just taken off. And it was a lot of coverage that Tennessee was a touchdown favorite at Pitt. And even though there was a lot of cautious, I guess, for lack of a better term, optimism for people who cover Tennessee, I wonder if the spread got to the players' heads for them to think, oh, we're 6.5-point favorites. We're supposed to beat Pitt. So even though they're a ranked team on the road, we're clearly better. And I wonder if that crept in. And I wonder if the gambling odds and betting markets is their own form of rat poison now in places like Tennessee where sports betting is so big.
I mean, that's a thought. Yeah, that's a thought. Though I did go 3-1 this week, so I'm just throwing that out there.
I was awful.
Don't
remind me. I was awful this week.
I learned a long time ago that is not my strength. So that is all Amanda. And I wanted to jump in there, so go right ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Do you think that, or how refreshing is it, or how not refreshing is it to have a coach at Tennessee? Because you've been covering Tennessee for a long time. To have a coach like Josh Heupel, where he'll come out and it's honest, like he's being honest with media, with the fan base, with we didn't practice well, we have this to work on, we need to do better here. And I understand getting caught up in the moment while he was in the locker room dancing after the game, because they pulled out a big victory for Tennessee. I mean, it was a huge victory for them. So how refreshing is it to have this coach that expects more, that wants more, that wants to accomplish more at Tennessee?
Yeah, it's funny. Last year I would have said it wasn't refreshing because he was very vague on a lot of things last year. This year it has been refreshing. I think Josh Heupel expects more from his team this year, so I think he feels he can be a little more honest about how things are going and when they're going poorly. I think we all know the mess that Tennessee was when Josh Heupel took over, and I think if you got him in a room, I think he might tell you he was shocked they won 7 games last year, given everything that was happening. And so I think it is refreshing, and particularly not so much with Jeremy Pruitt, although Jeremy Pruitt was, I mean, I wasn't crazy about his press conferences, but honestly, the worst was Butch Jones, because Butch, beyond his annoying cliches of champions of life and we're going to get 1% better today, just things that drove me insane. Even when he was specific, he was lying. I mean, there was that that 2017 moment where Shai Tuttle got injured in practice and everybody thought it was from a fight. And I think it was from a fight, but Butch Jones goes out in the press conference and says, no, he fell on a helmet. Who gets hurt falling on a helmet?
I'd completely forgotten about that story. It's like, I can't stand lying, but at least be good at it.
Yeah. And then he said he fell on a helmet, and then he went right to lashing out at the media for the salacious, quote unquote, fake news that they bring in. And I'm thinking, okay, you're saying fake news. Nobody with a brain thinks someone got stitches from falling on a helmet.
Wow.
And they kept, and then Jawan Jennings got suspended for calling the coaches liars and dismissed. And I'm like, well, Jawan Jennings was just telling the truth. We all thought that. But yeah, that's something that just stuck out to me.
Those stories from afar were kind of, if you didn't root for Tennessee, were incredibly entertaining. For those that did, I just want to hug them and say, oh my gosh, man, that had to be horrible. Because if you remember, Jennings also went on that big social media tirade where he's walking along and he's talking about his thoughts. And I was told he showed up to practice and he had not practiced at quarterback. And he said, this is Vanderbilt. I want to play quarterback. And that's the way things are going to roll. Just bizarro. So, but Caleb, let's get to Tennessee. Let's get back there and what happened yesterday. And one of the things that I think is completely overlooked, and I think there's a reason they brought him out there, was Aaron Beasley. So everybody wants to say Jeremy Banks hasn't played up to par, what they thought he would. He's preseason all SEC and all that. Jawan Mitchell has the off the field incident that is very mysterious. But here's Aaron Beasley, who I mentioned earlier, provided the pressure that led to the pick by Trayvon Flowers. This is a guy that is playing incredibly well at the linebacker position. And unless you got another name, I don't know of anybody else that's doing that right now.
Yeah, it's the second week in a row Aaron Beasley brought the pressure that caused the interception, because he did it with Tamarian McDonald too in the first game. I think that I'm still hesitant. I'm still questioning if that's so much Aaron Beasley as much as it is great designed blitzes by Tim Banks. And I mean, the only reason I say that is that, like, I still remember the issues from last year. And I also remember, and I'm also seeing, and this is probably more on Jeremy Banks because Jeremy Banks is more of a physical linebacker than a coverage linebacker. I'm still seeing the linebackers get torched in coverage in the intermediate passing game. Again, now that's not as much on Beasley. It's been a little more obvious when Banks has messed up. That touchdown to Bartholomew on Saturday was because Banks got completely lost in coverage. If you go back and look at that tape, I have no idea who he thought he was guarding in the assignment that he went to. So I think that, and Beasley is probably better at that because he was a safety. So he should be better in coverage than Jeremy Banks was. I think last year he may not have been as physical. Again, both Banks and Beasley are converted from other positions. Banks should probably have been a little bit more ready because he was a safety. I'm sorry, Beasley should have been a little bit more ready because he was a safety. But I do agree. I've seen a lot. He's been in on a lot more plays this year than Jeremy Banks has. But I do think that has more to do with the first couple of games. It seems like there's been more of an emphasis on the intermediate passing game from the coaches. And that's honestly what Mike New and Pat Narduzzi like to live by. I think when you get into SEC play and you see a lot more designed runs, particularly a team like Florida, that if they're smart, they use Anthony Richardson's legs more, which I think they just forgot to do last Saturday. I think that's where you'll start to see Jeremy Banks have a bigger impact.